You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so welcome, Sue O'Connor, master fitter here at Cool Clubs in Scottsdale. This is where you're based. One of very few female fitters that we know of in the country, and at least in our business, we've got two. We've got yourself and Claire Cornelius over in San Fran, and I think that's kind of interesting. There's not much female participation in the fitting side of things. So I want people to learn about you and how you got into the industry and how you became a fitter. Give us a little insight. How did you get into golf?
Well, thanks for having me. And what a great time to be in Arizona. Temperatures are cooling off.
Just
Can't beat this.
just starting.
Yep. I actually didn't start golfing till I was about 30 years old. And my background is in geophysical engineering. And I started golfing. And there was a gentleman who worked at a driving range where I used to hit balls. And he was a club fitter. And I got intrigued by it because I would see him giving customers their clubs, and they might have two of the same kind of heads and different shafts. And he started explaining to me how it all worked, and I thought it was really interesting. And then at one point, I was looking for something to do, and he called me up and he said, "I've gotten too busy. I need some help. Would you like to come help and come fit and come build golf clubs?" And so that's how I started.
So you never did any of a professional route. You really did just vocational straight into club fitting.
Yes. But club fitting uses the fun physics, not the theoretical physics that geophysics use. This uses the fun physics. And that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, and it's a learning process, I think, as well. Like learning about your own game as you watch others play. It's quite interesting to carry those thoughts into your own game sometimes. And you play now?
Yes, I do play now. I play as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yeah, love the game and love it when people come in who are passionate about the game because it's fun. It's a blast.
And what handicap are you at right now?
Usually in the summers I'm about a 2, and in the winters I'm about a 4. Play a little bit less in the winter, a little bit more in the summer.
Yeah, well, you're not messing around. It's some good golf for anyone. So, and I think that really helps too. Being a good golfer alongside having years of experience and putting those two together and helping people educate themselves on the golf swing and on what clubs can really do for people. You don't just do lady golfers, but I feel like watching you fit, that's one of your areas of specialty. Ladies and seniors, slower swing speed golfers. What do you kind of put in or take out from that gives you something more?
Well, it's really interesting. One of the things that I see with women is some of them don't realize what strength and speed they actually have, and they tend to sort of powder puff a little bit. And I'll say, you know what? Add a little more gumption, add a little bit more energy, and they'll swing again and they'll start hitting the ball farther. And they didn't know they had that in them. And it's great to see how that helps their game, because just by putting a little bit more energy into the swing, they hit it farther automatically. And then when we get the right clubs in their hand, and that helps even more improve their distance with their game, improve their accuracy with their game, and their understanding of the game.
Do you think that a lot of ladies hold back because equipment's designed maybe too soft or too light for lady golfers and they kind of have to work within those bounds?
Yes, and the other thing I see is quite often the ladies are too tall for ladies' equipment. So they will have gone to a store and bought some ladies' equipment, and the clubs are too short for them.
Generically, half an inch or an inch under a
Right.
men's standard
Right.
golf club.
And they can't do things like maintain a spine angle while they're swinging just because their clubs are too short. And when they're too short and too soft, they have to swing slower in order to get the ball to go where they want to. And I want them to be able to swing as fast as they can and still keep the ball in play.
And just hearing your story, you're a very competitive lady golfer. I think, just in the industry alone, we see a lot of men, but tell us some of the challenges that maybe a woman golfer has to go through to get to a club fitting. Like, I know that some guys just don't believe it is going to have an impact, but just hearing what you said about the length, that's one thing that you should say. Okay, well, my club's too short. Let's go and see a professional club fitter and experience that. What are the challenges the women golfers have coming in the door?
Right. And one of the other things is perhaps they need a little bit softer shaft, but it's too short. And they can come in here and get something a little bit stiffer than a typical lady's shaft. They don't need something super stiff, but they need something that's really stable because they do have great swings and they can come up with that speed. So they need to, I would love for ladies to realize what a useful investment it would be and how much more they would love the game if they're fit for clubs that will work well for them.
So I guess the analogy of the golf shaft being too soft is like this piece of string that doesn't time up. You have to find the right moment in time yourself, rather than when you get the flex correct. And like you say, it might not be much stiffer than a generic ladies flex, but something that helps them make consistent contact and therefore a consistent swing and then therefore a consistent game.
Right.
So it's a big change from just walking in and hoping that that you fit the bill for a lady.
Right. And the other thing, you can go to a senior, a generic senior flex shaft, but that might not be right either, because a lot of times, simply because we tend to be shorter, our swing arc is not as big as taller guys, so we don't swing as fast, but we might need something with a little bit more, that the tip of the shaft is a little more active to help us launch the ball in the air a little bit higher. And that's going to help your game too. If you can launch it higher and get that nice parabolic arc on a ball, you're going to get more distance.
And working with cool clubs for how many years?
14 years.
So 14 years in cool clubs. Understanding how clubs are built, I mean, that really links in with some of the issues of, we don't even specify, okay, this is a ladies shaft. It might say L flex on it or senior flex on it, but you as a fitter are in that session dialing in a very specific shaft, and then from that, they're even dialing it further for that one player. So the build process is different.
Yes. It's very, it's tailored to that player. And I'm a good example of the shaft label. One of the driver shafts I was playing said tour stiff. And if you looked at me and watched me swing a club, you'd say, she doesn't need anything that's tour stiff, because I don't swing at 1,000 miles an hour. But it just so happened to be that label on that shaft. And when it was cut to the tipped to the frequency or stiffness that I need to perform the best for me, that was the shaft that I needed. It just happened to have had a label that said tour stiff. So you can't go by those labels. You have to go by the frequency that we build to here at Cool Clubs.
Cool. Touch on a couple of other things are issues. I'll prod you in the right direction that I'm thinking of. How many clubs are we allowed in the golf bags? 14. Does every golfer, especially at slower speeds, need 14 golf clubs?
No, every player doesn't need 14 golf clubs. And one of the things that the slower swing speeds need to realize is there has to be a bigger gap in loft of the golf clubs. For example, you might have a 22-degree hybrid and a 25-degree hybrid, but those might go really close to the same distance. So you might need a 20-degree hybrid and a 25-degree hybrid, because if you increase the difference in loft between the clubs, because we swing slower, that will give you a better gap in yardage instead of being duplicitous and having too many clubs that go the same distance. So we typically don't need 14 clubs. You're allowed to carry 14, but you don't have to have 14 in the bag.
And I think that can frustrate players. You're out on the golf course, I know me fitting, slower swing speeds, players come to me and say, oh man, I've got to the point in, my 4 hybrid and my 5 hybrid and my 6 hybrid and my 7 iron all go the same distance. So they can have 3-4 clubs in the bag that are doing the same thing. And then when they're over that shot for the same yardage, they don't even know what to pull out. And then when they don't know what to pull out, they don't commit to the shot, and it just is a knock-on effect. And it's a stressful situation rather than a fun situation.
Right. And one of the reasons that a lot of players don't need a 3-wood in the bag. They can start with a 4-wood or 5-wood because it has more loft. It's easier to launch, and that ball's going to go farther because you can get it launched in the air.
Exactly. Explain that a little bit. So the more loft, and this is one thing that some people really struggle, maybe more men than women, because I think women kind of settle into, well, whatever it is, it's going to work. Some of the men I've had a 3-wood all my life. I must have a 3-wood. And even though they've lost speed, they need loft, right?
Right. And so a 3-wood might have 15 degrees A 4-wood might have 16 and a half, and it's amazing the difference in how much easier it is to launch a 16 and a half degree fairway wood. And the other thing you have to look at is the success rate. Sure, you can put a 15-degree 3-wood in your bag and play it, but if you're only successful with that shot 50% of the time because the loft is too hard to launch the ball, makes it too hard to launch the ball, get that 4-wood in the bag, so then you're going to have a successful hit 90% of the time.
Players might start manipulating their swings to get the ball airborne, and that will result in more inconsistent golf shots.
Right, right.
So really, the takeaway, and hopefully I think you've enforced it really well, is, get fit for the appropriate, flex and length, and make sure that, your body can handle it, and then have the right amount of clubs that all have a job. Don't have anything that gets doubled down on and is a wasted club in the bag.
Right. And the other piece of that is, don't forget it's okay to have hybrids in the bag instead of a long iron, because it's a lot easier to launch a hybrid and a lot more dependable than the long irons, because the long irons are so strongly lofted that they're difficult to hit. So don't create a bag that makes the game fun and you have the most success on every swing.
Excellent. Really good. Anything else you feel is really poignant for, slower swing speed golfers, or anything that you feel like you focus on as a fitter that you might see, out of the norm?
I think that the slower swingers also need to pay attention to what golf ball they're playing. Some players might have a buddy who says, oh, here, play this ball, it's a great ball. Well, that person might swing a driver at 105 miles an hour, and that person can compress the ball very differently than those of us who are slower swingers.
What was your swing speed with a driver right now?
My driver swing speed is about 86 miles an hour.
And what golf ball do you tailor with that?
I play the Titleist Pro V1. I can't compress the Pro V1X enough. I don't get as much out of it as I do the Pro V1. If you have an even slower swing speed, there's a great ball out there. Callaway makes the Reva, which the ball is actually a little bit bigger in size compared to other golf balls, but it's the correct weight, so it is a legal ball to play. But the bigger golf ball makes the center of gravity be higher, so it's easier to launch and spin. And anytime it's easier to launch, that's going to help you get more distance. Yeah. So that's a great ball to put in the bag if you're a little bit slower swinger.
Another good point. Something else to note, and people would only know if they've been in here, I guess, is our putter fitting technology is quite far ahead of the industry. And I've seen you do a lot of putter fittings, and I think you're kind of really good with the putter fittings. So maybe touch on some of the things there that you focus on when you're doing your fitting.
Putter fittings are interesting. Quite often people have the correct putter in their hand, but it might not be the right length, loft, and lie. And you do have to worry about length, loft, and lie on a putter. The type of putter you play is determined by your putting stroke. And at a minimum, when you come in for our putter fitting, you see video of you putting, and you can see what weaknesses are in your putting, what strengths are in your putting, and maybe what adjustments need to be made.
So you look at it holistic, you're looking at the player's posture, you're kind of making a putter fit that, you're getting it to sit on the ground correctly, and now we've got TrackMan or TrackMan 4, we're using that to read the ballistics off the ball, so you can actually improve someone's roll percentage, which would turn into more consistent putting on the green.
Yes, and the other piece of putter is you got to be very careful of the grip size. Quite often people seem to play a grip that's too small, so there's a lot of airspace in their hands when they're gripping the ball, and the putter, in a sense, jiggles at impact. And you need a grip that fits your hands on that putter.
Nice, stable through the ball.
Yes.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much for coming out and chatting to us today. I know we pulled you away from some fittings now that you can do them outside. But get stuck back into that, and hopefully we'll have you back in again. Chat.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
All right, sir. Cheers. I think it's a good one.